Welcome back. I'm Jonathan Fisher. When it comes to sales, tactics and skills are of utmost importance. But without an effective overall strategy, even the sharpest team will fall short. To really get ahead, every company must have a top-shelf go-to-market strategy. So how is yours working? Even if results seem good, could there be hidden opportunities for improvement? And with all the changes in the marketplace in recent years, have you made all the necessary updates to keep pace? Well, our guest can help us with that. For over a decade now, Jed Karban has been making a name for himself as a futurist, consultant, and trainer whose clients describe him as a creative business strategist and sales mentor. His specialty is helping translate brand identity into powerful and effective go-to-market plans that actually work in 2022. Jed, great to have you with us today.
I'm glad to be here, as always, Jonathan. Thank you so much.
So to start off, would you please share in more depth, what do you do every day?
Well, every day I'm a sales executive for one of the largest manufacturers of appliances in the world. So I do that day to day. Beyond that, however, I also run a small company called In3E, as well as I am building out a community, an app to be used as a community for selling passive goods. So I do a lot. I'm happy to do it, but I learn something new every day that I try to implement throughout all three spectrums of business.
Well, that sounds great. So it sounds like you're applying what you use every day, so that probably keeps you that much more sharp in your consulting work, I would guess.
Absolutely. It forces me to really kind of be strategic in just about everything I do, whether I say yes to it or no to it. It just allows me to kind of get down to the nitty gritty and say, okay, what's important? How do I develop a plan for it? And how do I go out and execute it? And those are the areas where I kind of use most of my skills for sales and for executing business.
Yeah, excellent. Well, so our topic today is building a go-to-market plan that's actually going to work in 2022. We all know there's been a lot of changes. I mean, there were already changes afloat, and I think that with COVID coming on and the Great Resignation, there are all these different changes in the marketplace related to how we work and how we get clients. Some things probably haven't necessarily changed. Maybe we just think they have. Maybe the way we do some of the same things, we need to do them differently now. So somewhere in that mix, I think a lot of mistakes are being made. I'm sure you see that as well. Where do you think folks are missing the boat in terms of business development right now?
Well, I think it's mistaking that the old plan works, right? Is that the tried and true is the only thing that's going to get you there. I think with the issues that we're facing now in the business community and also in the economy itself, I think our energies have to be focused on problem solving. I think in the past we could look at our successes and gear the next step on our successes. And as we look at it today, it's really about solutions. What are we dealing with this problem with? And then strategizing from there, I think, is the biggest difference. And so it brings us back to what is the strategy, and really it's just a business plan, maybe microed for one aspect of the business or another, or one region over another, or one market over another. But it's truly just having a structured business plan that we go to take action on.
So I think most companies probably feel that they have a plan. What do you think the key elements are in an effective business plan in 2022? Break that down for us, if you would, bit by bit.
Yeah, I think that's quite true. They do have a plan, and I think it really does start with kind of making sure that plan is broadly understood. I mean, I'm talking about it from a perspective of how it's being leveraged to go to market that day, right? Not necessarily that year. I think we often overlook the ability to kind of sit and create time for planning. And I know that a lot of business owners out there are just in the mix of doing business, right? They got the day-to-day operations and they have the challenges of all that comes with that, but they rarely get an opportunity to make time for actually reviewing that plan and communicating it to the parties that need to be communicated. So I think step one is really carving out time for reviewing your plan or creating a plan that's structured and going to be revisited regularly with you and your team if there is a team involved. Step two for me would be not just having time layered in for it, but actually kind of looking in specifics about what the problem is. What is the most glaring problem that you're facing? For some right now, it's supply chain, and then it creates a customer service issue down the road. And it's really getting strategic about how you're going to address that problem. And I think the last thing I would say as far as step 3 would be to build a network or a structure internally or externally if you're running solo that allows you to have some accountability against tackling those issues that you have identified as the biggest problem that you face. Because as I believe it, most strategies are deployed against issues, not necessarily what's working, right? We can kind of let those ride, but when we come across that big glaring issue, I think we don't know how to tackle that very well because it's uncomfortable, right? Most business owners want to think, hey, we offer the best product, we offer the best service, we offer the best solution, everything's great until the customer Googles them and we find the results, right? So it's a struggle for all of us, and I think it's a struggle for big corporations and small corporations alike. How do we deal with those challenges?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm hearing several things underneath of that in terms of missed opportunity. One would be assuming that the old way of talking about things in terms of just our solution is not going to get it done. It needs to be more attuned maybe to a solution today. And then the other thing I picked up on there was that folks are running their business, whether that's at the very top, the C level, or probably down the levels of management, and they're not maybe taking that time to do an analysis of their actual go-to-market plan to see what could be improved, not just where there's a glaring problem, but where they could actually push for better results than they have today. So how do they do that analysis then? Let's say that they take your advice and they set aside a session and they look at their plan. Just like you laid that out a moment ago, where would you begin your analysis if this were one of your clients, and start to see if you could tease apart where, this is a glaring problem, that's an easy one, here's a hidden opportunity. Talk to us about that process.
I think, when we look at it from that perspective, I think we have to take an accumulation of the data. Obviously, from a sales perspective, we're looking at sales, but then from a corporate collective, whether we're entrepreneur or not, we still have people that are part of our functioning team. And I think we need to look at that holistically and simply, do the simplest thing, right? Take a pros and cons approach to it. On this side of the ledger, it's costing us money or business. And on this side of the ledger, we're earning money or business from it. And when we see those things, we could easily strike out in terms of what's our next actionable plan that we want to address. And then we can benchmark it through simple SMART goals or other measurements that are going to allow us to kind of have a paced timeline to addressing those challenges that we're facing. But I would like to revisit just the fact that it's all about problem solving, because we don't need a plan if everything we picked up and turned to gold, but it doesn't. So I think when we look at it from our success levels, we could say, okay, these are the things that are resolved, but then now we need to go into the challenging areas. So for example, I've had clients with service issues, they sell a product, it has a broke down, situation, or a client's upset about something with that product, but the service is delayed because of parts and the supply chain and action remedy issues. So we have to look at it from that perspective. How do we target this specific need? And then we break it down into the 3 goals I said, so layering it down pros and cons. I can get people registered to offer more localized service to that consumer or in that market that I serve. Or I can go into, it's really not that bad. It was a one-off situation. So how do I remedy customer service and target it from that perspective?
What were some of the things that you needed to do, practically speaking? How did you go about getting the on-the-ground help? That sounds like an interesting case study.
What's that? I'm sorry.
That sounds like an interesting case study. Tell us more. How did you solve those problems?
Yeah, I think, from a corporate level, I had experience with that in particular, and we were looking at service. It was a mighty challenge for us because we're, at that time, I was servicing or selling a premium product, which, we think premium and it has no problems, but there are from time to time issues. And as you expand into the Midwest, where you have more rural communities, or I would say pretty much anywhere in the country with rural, it's really even harder to deliver quality service because you're relying on a different network for that. And I think collectively, I was offered the opportunity to go and look at that in terms of how do we resolve this issue. And we came up with about a 5-step, element, they're looking at it from the customer perspective. So how do we deal with this from the customer's perspective? They call in or they go online to our, website, and they, request a service call. And then there was breakage points from that standing point. So we had to really start then narrowing down the pathway for each of those breaking points and then include the parties that were responsible for them. So I think, that's a big part of our strategic plan. Like I mentioned in those 3 steps, creating time for it, creating strategy for it, and then actually, allowing others to work through it with you. And as we deployed it into those other service networks, because we were given lead on it, it was our job then to make sure that the network was in communication regularly, but also we were driving the network. Here's the benchmarks that we agreed to, but then, here's the testing points, and then now here's the results. So now what's the next step? And we just kept refining step after step. And I know it's a very generic answer to your question, but at the same time, it applies to any area of our business, right? As we look at the bigger problem, we really need to get it narrowed down to what is it doing to impact business. And most times what impacts business the most is the consumer experience. So if we can't deliver on that end to the consumer, how do we expect to grow our business? And from a corporate perspective or from a small business, my clients were wholesale clients. So I'm selling to them, who then we're selling to consumers on the end, right? So a lot of times our breakage was the communication between us and our clients, not necessarily us and our consumer. And once we determined that, we had to get better at managing the relational expectations as well as the process for those of our clients to go through in order to help their consumer. And so once we did that, the results were like astronomically better. I'm talking in the 2.5 years where we really focused on this in my particular region of that business, we were able to double business, not like incrementally grow it, but like take it from $15 to $30 million in shipped goods over a period of 2.5 years. And it was really from addressing the core issues that were at hand, not necessarily, hey, sales are great, we like your product, great, all that was fine. The issues were relational. How do we get around this? How do we serve our customer better? And that put us into a mindset of accomplishing how do we do this, right? And so then I think all strategies are the element of how do we apply this to who and what, where, and when, right? And so as we really break it down, we have to look at the big picture. Everything's going good. We offer a great product. There is a service solution. Then we narrow it down to the focus of, okay, well, it's not so great in these areas. We have to get really specific. Then we put together a plan in terms of like, okay, we want to see X happen by this, or Y happen by this. And then when we were testing those, we were gathering data to say, okay, this is an acceptable amount of, issues, or this is a great amount of success. And then we were able to kind of detail and refine and put it back in the process. And that's why it's important that we schedule time all the time to really be looking at this strategically, in terms of plannings, so we can look at it from a sales perspective. We can look at it from an ops perspective, however we want to look at it, but we need to absolutely adopt it in part of our time, and I know the first thing people say is, I don't have time. And that's totally I get it. It's time and it's money, but I don't know if we always equate the two together, right? We say it's all about time. I have more to get done. I have so much more to do. That's just a one-off situation until it's not, right? And then it's costing us a lot more money. I mean, you could talk about millions of dollars in some cases where we're losing because we're not taking time either individually with some networking folks that help us run our business, or coaches in this particular case, or as a collective corporation to say, this is where we're really breaking. And when we do, how quickly are we to run to that source subject, right? I'll look at it from sports. You're not going to win anything if you're not planned and ready for execution, and you learn from the game tape, right? I don't know if many coaches practice plays that are new all the time. I don't think they practice plays that work in game time situations all the time. I think they're practicing the one where there was breakdown. And so if we look at it from a modern era, there's so much data or tape to go off of that we, need to be willing to study it and take accountability for it and put it as part of our plan. So if you are strategic planning, carve out, time for that. Get a group of people together, look at what's going to be accountable. How are they going to measure you towards it? And then you can get really nitty gritty on the detail of a specific goal or objective, which is what the strategy's for.
I love that you're creating a positive feedback loop
Oh, yeah.
out into the greater marketplace, and then now you can offer that as an additional value when prospecting.
Jonathan, I really believe that that's, the power of working together as partnerships, right? And that's what strategy is really kind of defining us in alignment, or what I like to call the DNA of our partners. And I think, we often get lost in, like, this is our strategy, but really we should be building the strategy upon the needs of those we serve, those that we're, prospecting, those that we're actually trying to win their business with, because I think the more we understand how they operate, the more they'll be able to kind of align with us on what we're offering to them. I think we have some great solutions. I think there's a lot of competition for those solutions. And I think, our prospects or our clients are actually going to choose one over the other based on, that partnership and relationship. We talk about relationship winning all the time. It's what drives business. But in reality, I've been through a lot of different organizations and also different elements where I see that once we have the business, it becomes like, well, why would you choose anybody else? I think we often forget that this is a choice to continue working together, a choice to continue being partners, and it's an ongoing process. And the ones who really, really win are the ones that intertwine their DNAs together with the final aspiration of whoever that end user is of our product or service is the one that's benefiting the most, right? Because we get to leverage the fact that we're generating business for our clients, right? And I think there's no more powerful marker than those who can really say, my partner, Jed Karban, helped me win X amount of business, or introduced me to so-and-so that let me, secure business into the pipeline. And so I think that's what really kind of creates leverage for any of us who are putting forth a strategic plan. And so, as I said, we have to make time for it through, not only just analysis of the data and our sales and the results that those sales are coming and driving, but also how it's impacting other areas of our business to deliver a really powerful response.
So, Jed, I hear what you're saying on analyzing your current go-to-market model. Here's a question for you. What if I'm a brand new startup? I don't even have client one, or maybe I have one. Just from networking. I have a solution. I have one or a handful of clients just from networking and my own connections. How do I actually build from whole cloth an effective go-to-market plan in this post-COVID era?
Yeah, I was asking those same questions about, early February when I had this idea, which ironically was spawned by a client of mine. He says, what would you do if you had all the money in the world? And I said, well, I'd probably change retail, right? And that's what one of my dreams is how do we shop online and how do we integrate, that into our community aspect again? Because it is a challenge I really see that we have and we are moving towards as a generation, not just a society, but as a generation, is that there's going to be a whole new wave of that. And when I was asked that question, I really started, I've never ran a business by myself, right? I never built a tech company. Don't know what it looks like. And I think the first step I really took was reading information on how to build a business, right? And as I did that, one of the places I found myself doing a lot of research was LegalZoom. I know that sounds weird, but they work with businesses and small businesses all the time. And this is not a plug for them. I'm sure there's plenty of other resources, right? That will help us get started with the fundamentals. I'm going to bring X to market and I need to understand what's involved with starting a business. What are, the things I want to be faced with as a business owner, because it can be scary and it can be daunting for a lot of people. The second thing I really did is I really drilled down into the LinkedIn stratosphere. I mean, there are so many experts on this marketplace, right? That you could really find an expert that handles legal, an expert that's been in accounting, an expert that's been in product development, an expert that's been in distribution. And I started to really expand my network wants and needs based on some of the things I was reading about, and then the next step was, okay, well, what I'm building has a lot to do with, creating a network or a platform, which I'm not a tech guru, right? So I really started thinking about how do I learn from those? And so I searched people in that stratosphere as well, right? How do I start a tech company? And so it comes with being curious and asking questions all the time. But I think the first step, like I said, is get some support, understand how the business works. And then secondly would be to really find people inside the business community, in this case, LinkedIn, that's going to help you fill those gaps where you have no knowledge. Connect with them, get them to understand what you're trying to do without, selling your idea out wholesale, and allow them to kind of give you some insight. Follow them, look at their content. What are they posting about? Because each piece of that content is another data point, right? This is what I do when I see X. And so anyway, that would be step 2. And then step 3 is really about, finding tools that allow you to kind of map this out. And this is where the strategy really begins, right? And so for me, I found a company called Mural, and it allows you to kind of utilize this library of tools that are designed for planning and for customer experience and for other elements that allow you to kind of have the blueprint already mapped out for you. All you're doing is filling in the sequences relevant to your business. And once I had that, that's where my canvas came from. That's where my customer experience map came from. It allowed me to kind of really go to market with those strategies involved. So I think, again, it's preparing time, it's getting to know the network, it's filling the gaps, and then really finding the tools in order to do that, right? And I have a lot of other tools I've learned since then, and again, it goes back to accountability. So the minute I got through all those elements of it, the people that I met through LinkedIn or through my network, I stay in touch with regularly. I go back to them and say, hey, how does this look to you? Does this sound right? And now that I'm in the development stage of this plan, I actually use my developers because they'll outpace me in development. And so it forces me to go back and say, oh, boy, I didn't think about that. Or, geez, I really need to, work on this portion of my business strategy, right? Again, it goes back to problem solving. And that's what every strategy should involve is this problem solving. So I guess as a startup, look for the most obvious place. Where do I learn about building a business? Secondly, network with the people that are areas where you're not a proficient. Learn from them, talk to them, engage with them, right? And the next thing is, what are the tools that I'm going to use to bring this to life? And for me, like I said, it was Mural. Not plugging it, but it was such a user-friendly tool that allowed me to kind of just game plan everything. I'm also involved with other small affiliates that have other tools like project management devices. So I was able to benchmark and stage every aspect of my project in there in order for me to kind of stay on track with my build. And then lastly, as we went into build, I started kind of revisiting that plan every time I was working with my developers in order to kind of go fill in those problems or gaps that they were having in terms of the operation of my app. So, it is a big, big world out there. There's tons of tools, tons of resources, but if we keep it simple, you research a subject, you apply it, what you're learning, and then you go forth, right? And then you go back and repeat, right? What did I learn from this? So for those new startups out there, there's a lot of ways you can start, but the first one is understand what a business is, understand what's applied. And then secondly, find a network to tap into who could be a great resource for you moving forward. And lastly, find the tools that you need or don't have at hand. Sometimes we just think in terms of resources, in terms of money, but there's a lot of tools for building a business that will make your life so much easier. And I'll end with this on this comment. The more structured you are up front, the better you are on the backside. So again, being in sales for a long period of time, 2/3 of my life, I always closed more deals when I was prepared for that deal way in advance. I may spend 80% of my time planning and preparing so that the last 20 is really about in front of a customer, selling and closing a deal. But all the work has happened beforehand. And the same is true in the business world, right? All that work happens behind the scenes. It's just what the customer sees is such a small amount of what's actually happening. And I think, as someone that's interested in these things or had a desire someday to, create my own company, that was what I didn't know, right? I was just seeing the tip of the iceberg. I could do X better than my company,
Right.
right? Or better than the competition. My idea is this,
Sure.
but I didn't see the whole underlying portion of it. And that's where I had to learn the most out of. And that's what I'm trying to apply, and I hope other founders follow suit, because I know in this regard that, one of the things we see is, oh, there's just another tech startup. Oh, there's just another app being built, and there's a lot of funding for it, right? There's a lot of resources for it. There's incubators, there's accelerators, there's et cetera. Some of these terms I didn't even know about 6 months ago, but there are these things, and there's money there for you. There's grants there for you by the government, but until you research them or someone tells you about them, you don't know. Right. And I think that's the power of networking, doing the power of research. So I just encourage your audience, and if there's founders or startups to get nitty gritty on doing business, and if they need help, I'll be happy to help them and exchange some thoughts and ideas through LinkedIn or, through my website, or they can call me as well. So grateful
Excellent.
for it.
Well, a whole plethora of resources out there for sure. And among those may even be our show sponsor. Our show is sponsored, quick reminder, by Overpass.com. Overpass is the world's leading solution for hiring high-quality salespeople fast. With thousands of highly qualified, ready-to-work professionals waiting to meet you, Overpass allows you to hire a whole team in just days instead of weeks. Create your free account and see just how easy it is for yourself at Overpass.com. Well, Jed, you've shared a lot of great insights for us today. I understand folks can go and find you on LinkedIn and get a link for a free quick session with you. Is that right? Just your name, Jed Karban, on LinkedIn?
That's correct. Just Jed Karban on LinkedIn, and that's it. You'll see me there.
All right. And the spelling will be in the show notes. So, folks, thanks so much for being with us for another fantastic episode of our podcast, Evolve Sales Leader. Go make it a great, successful rest of your week.
Thanks so much.